kick off. Just wanted to pay my very sincere respects to all elders past, present and emerging, particularly from the Wallumatangal people of the Darug Nation, on whose unceded lands North Ryde campus, or should I now say the Wallumatangal campus of Macquarie University is based. And I also wanted to pay my very sincere respects to the Gadigal, the Ngunnawal and Ngambri peoples on whose land I currently have the pleasure of living and residing here in Canberra. They, along with the over 200 or so Aboriginal and Torres Islander nations right across the continent, have made an extraordinary contribution in culture, in language, in the arts, in philosophy, in science, for over tens of thousands of years, and indeed making the longest living continuous culture anywhere in the world, despite the very deep injustices of the past. Continue to make a wonderful contribution in modern Australia through sports, politics, business, the arts, in all areas of life. So in the spirit of a true reconciliation, one that's built on trust, healing and respect, not just as a word that we throw out, but one that is heartfelt and that is meant, I pay my very sincere respects to all elders past, present and emerging, and hope that all of us, whether as Macquarie University staff, Macquarie University alumni, Macquarie University students, and thus future alumni, particularly those of us, which would be all of you, hence why you're here, with an interest in something like mental health, and if I may say social justice, that we all play a role in advancing that cause of reconciliation, so that we can heal those injustices and move forward together. I pay my very sincere respects to any Indigenous student who might also be on the call today. I'm just letting in a few more students. Alrighty, kicking straight off, we have the wonderful Tyree Barnett. If you haven't met him before, you're about to. It's a wonderful pleasure meeting him. As you can see, he's a very happy, wonderful person who also happens to have a very deep passion, genuine passion for careers and employability. He's a careers advisor with Macquarie University. So before we do hear from our wonderful speakers, I'm going to throw over to Tyree just to mention a little bit about what he does, a bit about the careers and employment service at Macquarie University, because that is something that will absolutely help you in the future. So Tyree, thank you.
Great, thanks, Francis. I'll just speak briefly here about our service. So we are currently going to soon be based at 10 Haddonfield Road, just for your information in terms of a physical space. But the best way to access us, and I'll put in some web addresses as I talk here, is through a platform called Employability Connect. Now, the web address I'm typing into the chat now is for Career Hub, but that goes to Employability Connect. What that is that's our jobs board, our events, our resources. We have a resource library now built into that system as well as any other sort of careers related information you need around maybe how to start researching your career or even career options, even PACE. So most of you, if not all of you, are going to take a professional and community engagement unit while you're studying here at Macquarie, a PACE unit. And so there's also a section for PACE within Employability Connect. So that's one of three options you have. The second option you have within that platform is for a service called Macquarie University Student Employment Service, which is a little bit confusing because it's very similar to the overarching name of the service. But the Student Employment Service basically helps you with finding a job, a paid role, while you're studying at Macquarie or even for recent graduates. So I'm going to put that link in chat now as well. That's for MQSC is what it's called. What that is it's a team within our team that operates as a recruitment agency. And so these recruiters will recruit for jobs both on campus, so things like PAL leaders as well as student connectors. They've done a big push for casual roles there, as well as for off-campus and for employers in Greater Macquarie Park and Greater Sydney, companies like Hitachi, Cochlear, and all sorts of other of our employer partners. And so you can log on to Employability Connect, see what services they offer, get a look at what jobs they're hiring for, and then sign up to be part of the Job Ready Club. A few easy steps. One of the best benefits of student employment service is that for the jobs you're not successful in, where you get knocked back, you're given feedback from the employer on where you fell short and how to improve, which is not something that often happens in the real world. So definitely a great opportunity to take advantage of there. And then finally, with the last few seconds, wanted to put an early plug in for our Employable You to the Power of Us series. That's going to be starting in week 3 of the new session. We're going to start rolling out advertising and our a dedicated webpage to it. It's basically an engagement series of weeks. We'll have panels, workshops, employer presentations, all to get your employment ready. So be on the lookout through Employability Connect for that. You can like our Facebook page. You can also find us on LinkedIn as well at Macquarie Career Service, I believe. I'll put those links in chat shortly. Thanks, Francis, for the time.
Pleasure. Thank you so much, Tyree. And obviously, just reiterate what Tyree said, and just encourage all of you to access all of those services. They really are invaluable, particularly for all of you as you're about to embark on your careers. Certainly, services that you should be reaching out to because they will help, and they're obviously free. They're part of your degree, so please do reach out and check out the links that Tyree has popped into the chat for you. Thank you so much, Tyree. Just for the students that I've been letting in the past couple of minutes or so, if you can please just jump on the chat, type in hello, and get a screenshot, and that's going to be the first piece of your evidence for when you claim points for GLX 30 A or B, just for the students that have jumped on. So without any further ado, we have some absolutely, truly magnificent speakers. And you don't even have to take my word for it. You're about to hear from all of them. What I will just ask is that before our speakers, before you do speak, because obviously we're going to have a Q&A session afterwards, if you could please just advise us as what your appropriate pronouns are, just so that we can address you correctly. Just as a matter of respect to you. So just a very quick backstory to this. This is actually the third in our series. So basically what happened is, and a lot of you are going to be part of this network sometime in the next couple of years or so. Once you finish your degree, you'll have the option of joining what is now called the GLP Alumni Achievers Network. So basically, it's a way to stay in touch with the GLP, to stay connected with the GLP, knowing that the vast majority of GLP students, certainly if I were doing my degree at Macquarie and I were part of the GLP, I would love to be staying in touch with it, because I know for all of you, as it would have been for me if I were a GLP student, a big part of my degree, not just enhancing my university experience, but frankly, all the friends that I make, and I know that you all make, as part of the GLP, and just a way to kind of stay connected. So we launched the network earlier this year, GLP Alumni Achievers Network. So these are alumni. They were once in your very position. They were once students, either undergraduate or postgraduate at Macquarie University. They've now obviously finished their degree, and they're now succeeding in their respective fields, in this particular case, working broadly within the field of psychology. They've given up their time voluntarily to come and be with us today, noting the fact that it is in the middle of a workday. They've given up their time to be here, essentially to contribute back to the program. But obviously, when I say the program, I mean to students. So to all of you as current GLP students, they've very generously given up their time to come and share their wisdom and their experiences and all of that kind of thing with you. So we're very, very grateful for that to them. We're very fortunate to have them, and I know that we're going to be in for a treat. And their advice and expertise to all of you is going to be invaluable. So without any further ado, we're going to jump straight in and hear from them before we then open it up to all of you as current students to ask a question of our alumni. So without any further ado, we have the wonderful Leonie Nahas, and I did have to admit, I did jump on and find, and it wasn't too hard actually, find some happy snaps of our wonderful alumni. So Leonie is now putting into practice her degree and is working as a school counsellor and provisional psychologist at the New South Wales Department of Education. I did actually ask all of them for bios, but they were such long, wonderful bios, it would take literally like 5 minutes to read all of them. So Just take my word on how wonderful they are. You could always look them up on Google or something afterwards, but all very well credentialed. So without any further ado, Leonie, thank you for joining us. Would love to hear from you.
Thank you, Francis. Hi, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm giving back to a program that's given me so much. So I was part of the GLP from 2013 to 2018, which is when I graduated. I did a double degree in psychology and education. So it explains why I'm in the school field for now. But I remember starting off in psychology thinking, okay, so I know honours is looming and I know that's a pathway I can take, but how can I utilize my education degree as well? So it really merged well together, but I didn't know this pathway existed. It was only till I asked mentors and alumni actually that I found out this was ever possible. So you're in a really good position to ask us some questions, anything that you're pondering on ahead of your career, which is an exciting one. And it can take you to very different sort of fields, which you'll hear from the other wonderful alumni who I also know. It's lovely to meet you, to see you both, Anthony and Steph. I'm not sure we met Cassandra as well. So just a bit of background about some prompting questions. I'll just follow those. So with the GLP, I think it was a launch pad for me to really explore how I can embrace the field locally, but also internationally. So I was really fortunate to have received the New Colombo Plan scholarship, which some of you may know of, but that gave me the opportunity to embrace the region and study and intern across Southeast Asia. So I did that for a total of 19 months. And I couldn't get enough of it. I think once you head overseas and you see, for me personally, I really like working with local communities in areas of development and research, and also using my education side, really just engaging with the school communities, particularly in the impoverished sort of areas across Southeast Asia. So I did that for a total of 19 months. I also did some work with the UN as well and did a peace summit. So I was really utilizing the skills that I had in the field, but also just encouraging other young people who are so on fire and want to have the zeal to really just make an impact, which I'm sure you're all doing this degree for as well. So the GLP really gave me a broadened worldview, I guess, about how I can connect with people from different cultures, people from different ages. It's really about connection. And I think in the therapeutic field, it is attachment, secure attachment and therapeutic alliance is key to good work and good outcomes. What advice I would give to my first year self? So I was the type that loved asking questions. I was very curious. And whenever I had the opportunity to meet someone in maybe second year, third year, even fourth year, especially those who've done their honours, I'd use that opportunity to really just engage and really ask questions and explore what their pathway is and what, because overall you're going to synthesize that, all the experience, all the conversations you've had to see what works for me. So I did that continuously throughout my time at Macquarie, using the colloquial series and the GLP as a way to connect with people who also are like-minded and explore what they want to do with their degrees or something they're curious about. There's a lot of awesome. Actually, I was one of those students who did a bunch of studies for honours students. So I'll just show up in their studies and sort of say, okay, what are you doing in your research? What's your thesis about? Start doing that. It's a win-win. Honours students will really appreciate you, but you also get a broadened worldview about what the field is like and what the research might be like out there. I think I just want to reiterate the point. Don't be afraid to ask questions and approach people. It's my motto throughout my degree was say yes and figure out how to do it later. So if there's opportunities that come up, if there's things that you can participate in, just say yes to it. And then just go with, I said, ride the wave, I suppose, of what that might look like. It is daunting, but growth happens outside of your comfort zone for sure. I think for me, I don't really speak about what I do at the moment, but I'll just touch on that briefly. So part of the merging, I'm not sure if anyone does education here, but there's a wonderful program with the Department of Education. It's a sponsorship program, allows you to complete your fourth year and earn an income, a salary for the year, but then launch into a permanent position within the school community. So I've worked in the Hills area, but currently I'm in Western Sydney. in the Mount Druitt area, and I'm working across schools there. So I, almost like a child and adolescent psychologist, developmental psychologist, I do a lot of assessment, I do counselling, therapeutic work from young ones all the way to year 12. So I'm really busy at the moment, and I'm loving what I'm doing, and there are so many things I can branch into, but that's where I'm at the moment. If you're interested, I'd love to connect. I'm happy to answer any questions after that. I'll probably end there and pass it on to one of my wonderful colleagues. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Leonie. As you can see, all of them, when I preface this by saying they're all wonderful speakers with invaluable advice, I'm quite confident in saying that because they're all, as Leonie just has, they're all going to prove me right. They're all going to, that's my contention, and they're going to prove that contention. So thank you so much, Leonie. And just as someone who, at this time next week, I will be, again, a public high school teacher, as someone who spent about 4 years in quite a tough public school. And just so for all of you know, because I know all of you obviously have some kind of interest in potentially working in the psychology field, hence why you're here. The work that school psychologists do is quite literally life-saving. Like, I know, you're such a lifesaver kind of gets thrown out quite a bit. I have quite literally seen students' lives, young people's lives saved because of the work that school psychologists do. So if that's potentially something that's of interest, but also just as a shout out to Leonie for working as a school psychologist in the system, I know how difficult it could be potentially emotionally also to deal with all of that kind of stuff. But the work that Leonie, that you do or that you would be doing is life-saving. So thank you so much to you, Leonie. And the fact that you're also giving up time on top of your busy schedule to be here is a credit to you. So thank you so much, Leonie. If I could give you a high five and 2 thumbs up, totally would.
I'm returning it. Thank you so much.
Hopefully. Anthony, please correct me if I mispronounce your name. I believe surname is pronounced Joff. Please do correct me if that's been mispronounced. Working as a psychologist for the Centre for Emotional Health, and I believe he's also completing a PhD at Macquarie University at the same time. So without any further ado, Anthony, would love to hear from you.
Thanks, Francis. So last name is Joffe, like coffee, but with a J. But that was one of the better pronunciations that I've had, so thank you. So nice to see everyone and have everyone on the call today. I guess just to start out with, and echoing what Leonie said, the GLP program really does become a network. I mean, most of the people on the screen now I've worked with or have crossed paths with over the course of my degree, and even since I finished in 2018. So a little bit about my, I guess, role or involvement with GLP. I actually got one of the GLP early entry program spots back in 2014, so to start uni in 2015. And I think that really it really helped to form an initial network, right? There were a group of us who got the early entry. We kind of networked with each other, and then that expanded to other GLP students, GLP staff, etc. And I can confidently say, and I promise you, Francis didn't ask me to say this, but I can confidently say that doing the GLP made my undergrad experience a lot better, and has certainly helped me, I guess, in my career, which I'll talk about in a moment. So I guess in terms of what I gained from the GLP, and I guess the way that it influences my career nowadays, is the GLP, in my opinion, really comes down to being able to learn new ideas, foster collaborations, and network, right? Those are, from my experience with GLP, the 3 core things that I gained. And being a psychologist is all about those things. It's about being open to new experiences, collaborating, right? So I work in private practice, but I liaise with school psychologists. I liaise with OTs, doctors, specialists. And it's, again, as Leonie said, building that therapeutic connection, that therapeutic alliance, which is so critical to treatment. But I didn't always see myself becoming a psychologist, certainly not a clinical psychologist. So I'm busy doing my clinical psychology registrar program at the moment. And then when I finish the PhD, I'll get that clinical psychologist title, which is going to be a relief when that's finally done. But I did not have, even until I finished honours, had no plans on becoming a clinical psychologist. But it was through the connections and networks that I made during undergrad, speaking to academics, speaking to other students, that I realized that maybe the path that I had been considering probably wasn't the best path for me at the time. And I guess my advice to you then would just be, and you're going to hear this word a lot from me today, just network with lots of different people, right? Like when you finish high school or when you've, come back to uni, I found, at least from the people who I was around, we had all kind of grown up in our own little bubbles. But being exposed to so many new ideas, first at uni, but in the GLP program, will only set you up for success. Looking at some of the prompt questions, so what advice I'd give my first year self? This is a tricky one because I know probably for everyone on this call, you're well aware of the grades requirement for psychology and how important it is to do well and, excel, and every time you're supposed to do better. But speaking from experience, that can drive you to working too hard and focusing on uni exclusively. And I pulled one too many all-nighters when I did undergrad, and I stayed at uni many more hours than I needed to. And yes, it certainly helped, but I think my advice would be just slow down a bit, right? You're still learning, you're not in your careers yet. You don't need to do exceptionally well with everything you do. And this is not just advice I'm giving on the call. I tutor a lot of the undergraduate units on campus. And I say this to the students as well, like, we're here to support you. But, the grades are important, but you need to preserve your mental health and well-being so that you can apply your knowledge after your degree. In terms of advice I'd give to GLP students interested in working in psychology, I know that it's really, and I'm sure the other speakers on the call will agree, it's really hard to gain experience, right? Everyone says you need experience, but who's going to let you sit in a therapy room, right, and see how that's done? But I guess my best advice would be try to use your networks and connections to get any kind of peripheral experience. And I think this probably expands even beyond psychology. So some of the experience that I gained was I worked, at the reception of a psychology clinic, learning about Medicare, learning about billing, how to, read a mental health care plan, all of these things that just gave me as much peripheral knowledge as I could get, so that by the time I started in the career, I had at least more experience than someone who hadn't done those things. But yes, and I guess last little bit of information is, as a psychologist, your career is it's going to change. It's going to be dynamic. You're not going to be working in the same place forever. Maybe some of you will, but I think with the way psychology is going, that's not going to be the case. Most of the psychs that I work with work across different, domains. Some of them are school psychs 2 days a week, private practice 2 days a week, 1 day a week in a hospital. So just know that if there's certain aspects of the career that you're nervous about or that you're not sure you'll be able to handle, there's always ways around that. And I'm happy to talk about that more in the Q&A, but just know that the stats you're learning now, as difficult as it may be, and as much as you might be questioning why they're forcing you to learn stats in a psychology degree, will be really helpful regardless of the context that you work in. So let that be that carrot that pushes you through the degree. But otherwise, I'm going to hand back to Francis.
Thank you so much for that, Anthony. Yet again, proving the contention I made at the start. Some really top practical advice. And just to reiterate a couple of things that Anthony mentioned there, like obviously, please do look after yourself. Like, yes, it's university, it's academic studies, grades and all that sort of stuff will appear, but you've got to look after yourself, and mental health comes first. And I know for a fact, just seeing some of the people on the call, I know for a fact, because I've had this conversation with at least some of you, that, oh my God, like exactly that last point that Anthony just mentioned. And some of you have shown me the notes that you take in lectures, and I just didn't understand at all. So it's quite difficult. So, and now we've had that conversation of why do I have to learn this? This is so technical, all of that kind of thing. Hopefully you've now got at least a bit of reassurance from Anthony of someone who has been through that, like has literally been through that. And, hasn't just said, oh, look, you just got to do it for whatever, but, how it actually will be. So has not only A, been through it, but B, reassured you that it will help you in your eventual careers as psychologists. So sometimes I know we just need to hear that, so that when you are going through what might seem like mundane numbers and all that kind of thing, know that it will help you in your eventual careers. So that was absolutely wonderful. Thank you so much for that, Anthony. Anthony Joffe, I know that for next time now. Cassandra Crone, so they are currently pursuing postgraduate studies, well, quite advanced studies at Macquarie University. So perhaps a bit of a different approach. They're taking a bit of a different approach to psychology, perhaps more of, I guess, the academic perspective of psychology. I'm very much looking forward to hearing about their research, because I know some of you, why we say the broad field of psychology. So we've heard from now two wonderful people who are working on the front line of psychology as psychologists, but some of you perhaps might like to work in psychology, but not as psychologists, something such as what Cassandra is currently doing. So without further ado, would love to pass over to them. Cassandra, love to hear from you.
Great, thanks Francis for the introduction. So yes, I'm Cassandra. My pronouns are they, them. I'm a non-binary international student here at Macquarie. So I'm now doing my PhD in experimental social psychology. I did start my undergrad here back in 2015. So I've been here for a while. I did undergrad, then I did the Master of Research, and now I'm on to the 3-year PhD. I won't go too far into what we do in the research program, but as an overview, essentially we are looking at bias and discrimination toward gender diversity by using virtual reality. And we also use those kinds of technologies to collect human data to do machine learning and train AI, and also reverse that back. If you want to know more about that, maybe shoot me an email, pop it in the chat or something like that. So how did I end up here in research? Like the others have said, that wasn't my initial path. So my initial path started where perhaps most of you maybe are, where you get into the degree and then people go, do this work, do this work, do this work, get the grades, do clinical. It's so competitive, all these things that you're possibly hearing. And I was pushing that for a while, but I realized after taking a research internship, which is one of the things I did to get that experience that you are trying to get, that I really love research. I love the process. Is like solving a puzzle, writing a publication or part of a publication. I also really love stats. I know not everyone loves stats, but that's one thing I really like doing. And after having done that internship for about 4 years through most of my undergrad, I realized research is probably the better path for me. Maybe I don't want to work one-on-one with clients. So keep an open mind that you don't have to go straight for clinical, and you don't have to take this path that other people are maybe trying to set out for you. And you'll probably find your way by getting those experiences, and it'll tell you what you want to do, what you like, what you don't like. So some advice that I'll give, some kind of concrete examples or things, I suppose. First is don't be afraid to contact the academics at the university. I wouldn't suggest just emailing everyone, of course, but have a look on the Macquarie website, see who the academics are, look at what their research areas are. And if something strikes you as really interesting, don't be afraid to shoot them an email saying, hey, I'm interested in this. I'm a psychology student in first year, second year, third year. I'm planning on doing my honors. Could we have a meeting? Are you looking for research assistance? Do you have a project I could jump onto? That's what I did, and that's how I ended up with my internship. And I did that again at a later stage, and now I'm in a different laboratory. So I've been able to work with a lot of great people, make those international connections. And the GLP really does support you in doing these things. For example, you can get credit for doing these research internships. Some other things that have really come out of the GLP for me, out of interest, I did some courses internationally. So I'm really big on advocacy as well. Maybe you can tell by the research area of bias and discrimination. I'm into advocacy for a lot of things. And so I went to the Netherlands in 2017. I also went to Portugal in 2017 to do some short courses. One of those was on drug policy. And I did that out of interest, but I also got credit in the GLP for that. So GLP can really support you in finding things you're interested in, expanding your horizons, making new networks, not just in Australia, but internationally as well. Even things like joining a student group and maybe becoming a leader of that student group. That's really good experience, both, to connect to the GLP, but also just for you to have those experiences. Let's see. One thing that I was told that I'd like to pass on to you. So one thing that I was told in my undergrad by someone at some point, I can't remember at this stage, but they said to me, write something every day. And that has been really, really valuable for me. So I just want to pass that on to you all. Write something every day, start early, don't be afraid to reach out to people, even if you think, if it's a tutor, you think maybe they have a higher power or position than you in the university or something. But the tutors, I'm a tutor. Anthony mentioned that he is a tutor as well. We're also students. We've been where you are. You can always reach out to us, try to create those networks. And I just want to touch on some of the questions that I haven't quite gone through. So one that maybe people haven't touched on yet was, were you unsure or perhaps afraid of anything while being a uni student, and how did you overcome it? So as I mentioned before, I am an international student. I'm not sure how many of you in the audience are international students, but hello, welcome to my talk. But I feel you out there. It can be a challenge. There can be additional challenges for international students. The GLP, I think, is really good for international students as well, because you're coming to Australia, you're getting all these new experiences, but you didn't grow up here, so maybe you don't really know as much as a domestic student might know. And the GLP can really assist with finding things there. But I'll say that one thing I was afraid of or unsure about was, as I was going through my degree, trying to get the grades, I wanted to, move up to the postgraduate work. And I was constantly worried about things like, oh, what if I don't, have enough money to pay for my tuition, or what if my visa gets cancelled, or, all of these things that kind of go on for international students. And how did I deal with that? There's quite a bit of anxiety going on there. Some things that I did, some things that you can do is, again, network, talk to your peers. If you're in a GLP session, talk to the other people there. You're probably going to see a lot of other international students there. Again, student groups, really good place to meet people, talk to people, just get things out on the table. And I think you'll find that there is support out there for you. So I might leave it there for now.
That was absolutely wonderful. Thank you so much, Cassandra. And just on that last point that you were mentioning, as ironic as it sounds, vulnerability is strength. And it takes a lot of courage, obviously, to mention that. So I guess the life advice, we might call it, that you provided for students, just in terms of, potentially if and when anxiety does arise, but then also just, being confident, reaching, basically everything that you've just said was incredibly important. And that's why, just for all of you current students who are here, just for your reference, like it's obvious, as you'll see and hear it now, but this wasn't just, a straight up black and white careers session. As GLP alumni, former GLP students, also sharing that little bit of life advice, as you've heard, the advice they'll give to their first year selves, what they were perhaps afraid about and how they overcome it, like that kind of advice. So it's more of, I guess, a mentoring session in addition to the careers aspect of it. So hopefully you're getting value out of that too. And Cassandra, that was just incredible. So thank you so much. And just the other reference for current students is, you can actually, as part of your internship hours, or if you're looking to build those internship hours and obviously claim for those, volunteering with a PhD student is claimable under those hours. So if you did want to reach out to a PhD student or a mentor or something like that, and basically assist them as a voluntary research assistant, essentially, that is claimable for GLP. So obviously, you'll build a lot of experience, which Anthony also mentioned. You will also be able to claim those GLP points too. So I feel a little bit more reassured about the future of humanity, knowing that we have someone as wonderful as Cassandra really diving deep into that particular field of psychology and looking to advance academic knowledge about that. So thank you so much, Cassandra, for the work that you do. So without any further ado, jump straight into Stephanie, who is joining us from work. So thank you so much, Stephanie. And Stephanie, if you need to leave after your contribution, obviously, please feel free to. So we're very fortunate to have Stephanie with us here today from work. You can probably see the background. She's literally at work, so she's probably going to have to skip her lunch break today, just for the sake of being here with us.
It's fine.
This is your lunch break, so you can see. But just to emphasise to our wonderful students, the sacrifice that our wonderful speakers are making to be here and to contribute. So we are very appreciative, and please, I encourage all of you to flick them a message and just say, look, genuinely thank you, because it's wonderful they're being here. So Stephanie currently works as a psychologist at Jennings Street School, which I'm very much looking forward to hearing about. And yes, love to hear from you, Stephanie.
No worries. So yeah, thank you so much for having me. Obviously the GLP played such a big role in my undergraduate. I was more than happy to come and speak to you guys about it. Yeah, just a bit of background. I live in Melbourne now. I'm a clinical psychologist. I work 3 days a week in a school for kids with autism and severe language disorders. I work 1 day a week in private practice with kids, adolescents and their families here in Melbourne face-to-face. And I work 1 day a week in a private practice. It's a telehealth practice for low SES adults in regional and rural Australia. So exactly as Anthony said, you're definitely not locked into doing the same thing every day. My week looks very, very different every week, which is great. So in terms of the GLP assisting me, it's quite interesting when I was reflecting on this today, because I did my PACE unit, well, I got exposure to the PACE unit through GLP, and I did it over in Fiji for a month, and we worked there with a non-government organisation called Empower Pacific. And we were doing this research-based program to help them gather information about suicide risk among teenagers and youth, because they have quite a serious issue with that over there. And we were developing a survey package that Empower Pacific could use to gather reliable and valid data, which they would then use to inform the programs that they were developing. So I got some exposure to the importance of research in terms of how it really informs the interventions that we do as clinicians. And I found that really fascinating, but it also taught me that I wanted to be on the ground. I wanted to be working with kids, with teenagers. I wasn't really interested in just working purely in research, although I could see the importance of using that to kind of inform my work. But now the interesting thing is, when I was thinking about this today, is I'm now working in the education system and seeing on the ground the practical issues that I see with the kids that I work with individually. And I'm noticing things happening systemically, not only in my school, but also in the department. So working on a school level now to develop processes and policies to better support our diverse students and make sure we've got things in place. And also thinking about starting a PhD in the next few years that can explore some of those systemic issues and look at how we can make changes on kind of a broader scale that will hopefully filter down to the individual students. So it's quite funny that, you know, the GLP and all the exposure that I had through that has really now kind of played out practically in the work that I'm doing. The reason I think GLP really assisted as well was that it's so easy, as the others have said, to get so caught up in grades and assignments, and you can just literally work non-stop in psychology. But it really forced me to consider, how am I going to make the time for these colloquia? How am I going to make the time for this experience? And really motivated me to actually get those elements into my undergraduate degree as well. I am just going to say something that we kind of, I guess, haven't really touched on, so we can go to the Q&A, about how to prepare to finally find a job. As Anthony said, it's really, really hard to find work before you're qualified in this this field. I think that's a really good example. I worked one day a week in a neurofeedback clinic, working and getting to know other psychologists. But get creative. It doesn't have to be in psychology. The rest of the work I did was as a student ambassador at Macquarie. I worked at Macquarie Hospital as the assistant to the Associate Dean of Medicine and Health Sciences. And it was my references from those jobs that was about written and oral communication, my people skills, organisation, capacity for leadership that got me into that Masters of Clinical Psychology. And from that Masters, that's where you do your placements. That's where you get that exposure to developing those clinical skills. There's no real expectation of having developed those clinical skills before you start that clinical Masters. And I think that's what I was really scared of. So get creative on how you can use your experience at other jobs to support those skills that are going to be important for you if Masters is the course that you decide to take. And I'll just pass back to Francis.
Thank you so much, Stephanie. As all of you current students will know, when we advertise this on Facebook and in the weekly email and all the rest of it, the way that, the title essentially was, connect with inspiring GLP alumni. And I think that our four wonderful alumni speakers here today have really reaffirmed that. Speaking sincerely, like from the heart here, these are people who have, of all the career, and as you've seen and heard from them, frankly, they could have chosen any career path and succeeded in that. They chose a career path, as all of you current students are in the process of doing, chosen a career path to essentially advance the cause of humanity, work with those, if I may say, less fortunate, at those with a lot of people perhaps in their greatest times of need, and as I mentioned before, literally save lives. From me, both wearing my GLP hat and just as a person, thank you all, the four of you, so much for the work that you do. It's one of those fields that we as a society cannot do without. Just all speed and strength to you. You are wonderful, magnificent people. And to all of you current students, when I found out that psychology students would be part of my portfolio, my advisory portfolio, I was very glad, because obviously, it helped me, encouraged me to go that extra step for you, because you are young people looking to, make that your career choice, to go and help people, really, even though you could be doing anything else. So hopefully you have indeed been inspired by our wonderful alumni, as I have here today. And thank you all so much again for the work that you do, not just for speaking with us here today. So, current students, you're inspired. I'm sure your mind is racing with all kinds of things at the moment, full of all ideas. All of that advice was worth its weight in gold. So if you're more comfortable popping into the chat, I'm monitoring that. I'm happy to ask that question on your behalf. Otherwise, this is quite informal. Just take yourself off mute, jump in, feel free to ask a question. I would encourage you to, otherwise I'll just keep on talking, and I can assure you don't want that. So either on the chat, if you're more comfortable, or obviously just feel free to jump on off mute. So the wonderful Sophia Sawari, who is going to go on to become a brilliant psychologist and has a magnificent story already. How did you cope with balancing experience and studies? I will pose that to perhaps in the order that in the speaking order that we started. Thank you so much, Sophia.
So the way I went about it, I think I can really resonate. I was very immersed in my studies. And I think we can all, with psychology, high achieving and wanting to do the best that we can. The way I went about this is with the overseas experiences, I was very much present to that. So having that time away abroad was a bit more focused for me. So I was on exchange, but also was able to do those internships. Coming back though, I think I focused on not so much time management, but energy management. So where are you putting your energy towards? How are you, if it's studies, okay, well, having those set amount of time, but what fills your cup? that's something you'll hear a lot with self-care. What fills your cup, and that doesn't look like just putting, you know, a shower cap over your head and having a bath, but it's really about what energizes you. If it's connecting with people, having, you know, time in between tutorials to just hang out with friends on the grass outside in the sun, then do that. So what energizes you? So for me, it was energy management, not so much time management. It's not so much a practical thing, but something I could just add value to, hopefully.
Yeah, just jumping off from what Leonie said, I think for me, it was about energy management, but maybe not so consciously. So I made sure I was getting as much experience as I can while being a student, within the context of being a student. So a lot of my experience was actually, if you look at my LinkedIn, Macquarie, because I was, you know, peer assisted learning lead at Macquarie. I worked for student wellbeing at Macquarie, worked for Wallangamuru at Macquarie. So kind of getting a lot of different experience on campus. I could do it between classes, doing that type of thing. But Sophia, one bit of advice that an academic once gave me, and I do stick to this advice mostly, is that you can always get more experience, but you can't always be at uni. And so my advice would be, make the most of uni, you know, do the best you can without, you know, pushing yourself ridiculously hard. But just know, and it happens a lot, if you get to the end of your degree and you say, you know what, I haven't had enough experience yet, take a year off, get more. There's absolutely no rush. And I think I took a year off after honours and I was still the youngest or second youngest in masters. So it's really, there's no rush. But passing on to Cassandra.
Thanks, Anthony. To add to that, perhaps a way to find that balance, you know, everybody's always talking about work-life balance, or in this case, perhaps study experience life balance. I think it can help if you play to your strengths. Everybody has different strengths. As Leonie has said, what energizes you, which versus what doesn't. So for me, I actually love to organize things. So I love time management. I love looking at my calendar. I love going, where can I fit this thing in? But that also includes, where can I fit in time to spend at home with my dog? When am I going to have time to go out for dinner with my friends? Things like that. If your strength is not time management, that's totally fine. Find out what your strength is. Maybe do an experience that plays to that strength. I think that is really valuable. On to Steph.
Unmute myself. Yeah, I think everyone's made really, really good points. My main thing, I guess, to add to that is that I would always try and link things that I didn't want to do with things that I like, to try and make those things that I didn't want to do feel more appealing. So I never found the time for exercise unless it was with my friend Kate, and we would catch up and we would listen to music and we would do a workout. And so just finding those little ways to combine and make sure that you are making that time for yourself in other realms of your life as well. And just before, like I said before, be creative with what you are already doing. You are getting experience in so many different areas of your life that is relevant for the work that you want to do. You just kind of need to get better as well at identifying what it is and then being able to reflect that in your resume. So get creative with that as well.
Sophia passes on her thanks. I don't know if you can tell, my life is kind of pandemonium. So I've got my little dog, Athena, who insists on joining just about every call. And because when I'm on a call inside here, she starts scratching on the door. And as you can see, leave me alone. She's about to start jumping on me. And also my beautiful little grandma here, who, that's why I pop myself off for a little bit, because she hears me talking. She thinks something's happening. So she wants to come in. So here's my beautiful little grandma. So say hello, Nonna. Ninetta, look over there. Say hello.
Hello, Nonna.
No, there you go. Good girl. All right. So she'll be joining for the rest of the course.
I know this one.
You know this one?
Yeah.
Okay. Good girl. I can all right. So welcome to the joys of working from home. We have our beautiful family here. Just going to quickly check the chat. So Vivian asks about advice into getting into masters. Reham asked about, so what can you do if you don't get into masters in the first go, now that the 4+2 pathway is taken away? What work is there for psychology honour graduates in between waiting to get into masters? But it seems like, so Vivian and Reham, if you could just let us know, I believe Tyree has answered that. has sent a link on the chat. Please let me know if that's answered your question.
Oh no, that
Yep.
would not have answered the question. Sorry, that was just in response to Anthony's comment about getting work on campus.
Oh, okay. No worries. So I guess maybe a quick piece of advice, knowing that getting into postgrad, might not be easy. So perhaps for the four of you, those of you who've done postgrad, I don't know, maybe a tip. I know you've provided them already, but maybe one quick tip that might not be mentioned already.
I'll just do a quick tip. I'll just jump in. Apply everywhere. I knew I wanted to move to Melbourne. But the other thing is just really do your research on the uni. When you're going in for a clinical master's, it's really great to know what research fields are they looking into, who are you interested in working with, how can you really personalise your application to that university and express to them that you really value them for them, because they're so used to everyone just applying everywhere and then having the same kind of applications. If you know a bit about the university academics, research areas, I think that really makes a huge difference when you're trying to stand yourself apart. I also wore really big earrings because I have a really generic face and I wanted someone to be able to remember who I was.
A really generic face. I wonder if that's...
Well, people always
like
think they know me and they don't know me. And they were like, I was in a cohort of 12 and there were 4 of us that were like tall, really long brown hair, like Caucasian, all looked the same. So maybe they just couldn't remember which one of us they wanted to put in the program and then they just offered it to all of us.
Thank you so much, Steph. That was wonderful. I hope that's not the one takeout that everyone gets is you just the generic looking Steph.
Make yourself stand out. You want to be like not just how you look, but the questions that you ask, all of that kind of stuff.
That was invaluable. And Annika, our manager, quoting her. I love that advice. It's very, very good. That was quite in detail. So, Leonie, Cassandra, or Anthony, would you like to add to that? And obviously, students will have time potentially for one more question after this. So if you got something on your mind, please jump off mute or pose it in the chat. I'd love to hear from you. But Anthony, Cassandra, or Leonie, if you're welcome to add to that if you like.
I think the only thing I would add, because Steph summed it up, is don't be put off by like the huge numbers you hear of people applying. Like unis love to advertise they got 600 applicants for like 20 spots. But if you're taking Steph's advice, it's the same 600 applicants at all the unis. So if you apply far and wide, you'll get in somewhere. And if you don't get in the first year, you'll get in the second year. And if not the second year, the year after. But don't be put off by it because it's so, so, so worth it, regardless of which program you do. Strongly advise applying.
Just a quick tag on from that. Also, just to really emphasize the transferable skill set that you'll get just from being at uni and doing sort of just, even the way you present yourself and the way you speak, the way you present your case for your why. I'm really big across like all my alumni stuff at Macquarie. I always say connecting with your why, because that just really forms your trajectory moving forward. And that's kept me in my role because I'm always coming back to my why when things get really challenging and tough. But I think when it comes to interview, I had to still interview for my sponsorship program to get into postgrad. And they really just gave me feedback on, you really know your why. You really know why why you want to go for this and why you want to pursue this. So that's just something I wanted to emphasize as well.
I'll just add a last, perhaps, perspective again for international students. So this particular thing about getting into masters can put a lot of stress on international students because we don't have that wiggle room in our visas. Taking a year off means leaving the country and possibly not coming back, and some of us maybe don't want to do that. So great advice has been given so far, but what if you don't get into masters on the first year? Macquarie specifically has the Master of Research program, as do some other universities, and you can take a year to do that. If you've done your honors degree, it will just be a 1-year Master of Research. You're going to come out of it with a master's degree, but it will also help you gain some of that experience that you may not have had previously. So that's always an option.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for that, Cassandra. We have two last quick questions. We have one from Yajing, which I was going to ask if someone knew about that. So thank you so much for Anthony. So Yajing, Anthony's just responded to your question. So if anyone's interested, particularly international students who want to join essentially like a community of international students studying psychology, Anthony has popped that a suggestion there. Maybe Cassandra, if you're part of one already, if you would be so kind as to pop one in there, just for any international students that might be there. And then Steph, insofar as it can be answered in about 30 seconds or so, we have a question here from Alyssa. In terms of your experience at the neurofeedback clinic, Steph, what was that like, and what point at your career studies did you do this? In a nutshell, if that's possible.
Yeah, I did this in third year honours and in the year that I took off as well. And it was just unpaid voluntary work. And basically it works like brain training, advanced brain training with electrodes, where I would set certain frequencies that we wanted to encourage. And certain frequencies that we wanted to discourage, and the kids would have to play like video games with their brain, basically, if that makes sense. It was called the Sydney Cognitive Development Centre, and it's in Bondi, and you can Google it and they will have probably got some more information. We mainly worked with kids with ADHD, trying to increase their alpha waves and decrease their delta waves, if that makes sense.
Steph, you are literally the most least generic person I think I've ever met. Seriously, I think you're describable as many things. Generic is certainly not one. That's wonderful. Thank you so much, Steph. So just before, sorry, this is the slide that we should have been on before, but that's okay. This is the slide. No. This is the slide that we need now. So just in closing, I guess just really in the spirit of the discussion, and many of our actual psychologists have touched on this. Your mental health really is critical, and I cannot emphasize that strongly enough. Please make sure that you're looking after yourselves. Please make sure that you're looking after each other. There is a wonderful wellbeing service at Macquarie University. Quick and easy way, if you need to reach out or if you need to find details of that, if you jump onto Google and just type in MQ Wellbeing, it's the top link that'll come up. It'll open up the page. Further information links will come up, and you'll be able to contact the team and either self-refer, or if you know of someone on campus or a friend of yours who's a Macquarie student who you feel might benefit from such support, please do that. I cannot encourage you. This is a cup of water that I've been drinking, the way that was described when I was going through my Berry Street training before becoming a teacher, is that all of us essentially are like cups. We can only fill our cup to a point before it starts to overflow. That doesn't make us weak. That doesn't make us, it's nothing negative about that. It's just the reality of being a human being, that our cups can eventually overflow. So if you feel like your cup is getting full and you're about to overflow, please reach out for support. I cannot emphasize that highly enough. Just very quickly, to GLP students, if you want to just jump on and just write thank you onto the chat, that's your second screenshot. Then you'll have your evidence for the session today. I cannot thank enough our wonderful speakers, not only for coming to speak to us today, or particularly for speaking with us here today, but also again for the work that they do in quite literally shaping and saving lives. So for all of you current students who may have at some stage had doubts, wondering why am I studying this, what's the point, all the rest of it, hopefully now, in addition to the very practical advice, career advice, life advice that you've now had, hopefully you're feeling a lot more reassured about your choice to go into this field, a very noble one at that, because you've now seen the wonderful work that psychologists, and in Cassandra's case, I guess researchers do, and I encourage you to keep going. The world most certainly needs you, and very, very proud of you for choosing this particular career. So have a wonderful afternoon. Thank you so much for joining us, current students. Thank you so much to our 4 wonderful speakers. Please excuse the beautiful little grandma and my dog. She's now here sleeping. Have a wonderful start to the week, a safe afternoon, and I look forward to seeing you around. Thank you so much, everyone.
See ya.
See you later.